Welcome back to the channel, guys, and first of all, thank you very much for the positive feedback on the Jamie Allen interview after his victory at the Spine race. I'm glad some of you found it useful. Today I'm speaking to another one of my athletes, Dave Behr. Now, last year Dave was in the shape of his life going into his big target for the season, the 100-mile race at Ultra Trail Mount Fuji. And unfortunately, 3 weeks before the race, he suffered a setback which ultimately led to a DNF on race day. Now, if you've spent any length of time in this sport, you'll have had more than your fair share of setbacks. And it's how we respond to those setbacks that really shape who we are as athletes. And this is the story of how Dave responded to his setback. Dave Behr, thank you for joining me today, Dave.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you for asking me to share my story.
My pleasure. So, first of all, Dave, could you just give us a little bit of background about your running, where you're based, etc.?
Sure. I'm based in Hong Kong. I have been running for about 13 years now. Actually started running when I was living in the States. A friend who had been a smoker quit smoking, and within 8 or 9 months ran a half marathon. And I just realized I can't do that, and I think I'm a relatively healthy person. So I started running, and then in 2017 I moved to Hong Kong. And running here is very challenging because it's very hilly, and the weather for 6 months of the year is pretty unfriendly for running. But I continued being a road runner up until about COVID. And then I lost my first Boston Marathon right at the start of COVID. But I had a friend who was also primarily a road runner who said to me, hey, once a year or so I like to run the Hong Kong Trail, which is one of 4 major long distance trails that we have in Hong Kong, and the easiest and shortest of the bunch at only 45K. And so I said, all right, you know what? I don't have my marathon anymore. Let's do that. Let's run the Hong Kong Trail together. And we went out and we did it, and it was very leisurely. I think we stopped for an hour for lunch in the middle. But it sort of
civilized.
Yeah, very, very civilized, but it sort of hooked me on the idea. I had previously avoided the idea of hills as a road runner was, just not something that I was interested in, but it sort of kind of hooked me on the idea of doing trail running. And so then ever since I've been a trail runner, and I would say I'm primarily a trail runner now.
You've made the full conversion, Dave. That's the first time I've heard you say that.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. I guess I'm just not interested in grinding away at the road anymore, and it's just not as pretty, honestly. So
it's true. You've eventually seen the light. So you and I have worked together for a few years now, working on your trail running, and today we're here to talk about your adventures into the 100-mile distance. And I was looking at your training peaks just before we came online now, because ultimately you wanted to do 100 miles, and it was Ultra Trail Mount Fuji. And the plan was, last year you had your place, your training had been going fantastic, and then April the 1st of all days last year, things went sideways. So
yeah, things went sideways. That's a good way to put it. I travel to Japan frequently because my wife is Japanese, and we had gone for a week for Easter and to do some skiing. And so the first day that we were in Tokyo, I just went out. A very standard road run in Tokyo is to do a lap around the Imperial Palace. It's like a perfect 5K. So you run there, you do as many 5K laps as you want, and you run back. I was just going to do one lap that day. Total thing was going to be about, 45 minutes, maybe an hour or something from the hotel and back. And towards the end of it, I just pulled a hamstring it was such a freak thing. I had been feeling great up until then. I had been feeling okay during the run. I wasn't running hard, and I just pulled a hamstring. And then for the next, and that was about 3 weeks before the race. And then for
Yeah.
the next 3 weeks, I just couldn't get it right.
You kept you kept trying with it. Rather,
I did. I kept
rather.
trying. Maybe that's my mistake, but I just couldn't get it right. So
Uh, yeah, I have it
yeah,
here. I'm just looking at it. You did try a couple of test runs, and eventually, I think you accepted that the injury was bad, and you didn't run at all for, let's see, almost the 3 weeks until race day.
yeah, yeah. I really, because I had. It's one of these things. I think a lot of us fall into this trap. It's like you sort of feel like everything's been going so great, and there's still enough time, so maybe we can sort of rest, but still train because we don't want to rest for the 3 weeks before the race. That's too much rest, but maybe we can find a way to rest and train and what, yeah. So, and so then the race came, and sure enough, the hamstring wasn't great, and then I probably was favoring my good leg and started to develop some problems in that. And by, I don't know, 60 to 65K in, I just couldn't run anymore. I wound up walking a very easy section into the 70K aid station. And for the first time since I started running in 2012, made the decision to pull the plug, which was a very difficult decision. But faced with the reality of walking another 100K since I couldn't run,
It was
uh,
the only decision.
it was the only decision. Yeah, yeah.
And afterwards, you had, let's see, you did have a few weeks of real recovery um, before we started
Yeah,
to
I
build up
finally
again.
went to go. I finally went to go see a physio, um, just to try to figure out the best way to rehab, the best way to re-strengthen, to try to get it back, get the functionality back. And then that took a while, and then I caught pneumonia, so then I got derailed again. But then finally, after some months, honestly, it was mostly okay. So.
It did take a
But yeah, it
while.
was very disappointing because you and I, when I first started working with you, it was because I wanted to do a close to 100-mile race here. There's a UTMB race in Hong Kong, and they had 140 that I had signed up for. But then basically, because Hong Kong's COVID restrictions were very strict, much later than the rest of the world, that race got wiped out. And so then the next year, I signed up for an actual 100-mile race, and then we had some crazy rain here, which happens in Hong Kong, and it caused a bunch of landslides on a bunch of trails, wiped out a bunch of trails, and so the 100-mile race didn't go forward. And so then the third time was supposed to be Fuji, and then 3 weeks before I got injured. And you just kind of start to wonder, am I meant to run this distance?
But I remember immediately after Fuji, you were already planning another 100.
I was. I put myself into a different 100 in Japan, um, that happens in September, because I was just like, come on, man, like, really? I like after all this, but then I caught pneumonia over the summer, and it basically wiped out another, I don't know. I mean, I was basically dead for a couple of weeks, and then even then, after that, the training wasn't great for a couple of weeks, so it basically wiped out a month, and I finally just decided that this 100 in September is not happening either. And yeah,
So
you really start to wonder.
when did the decision when did you make that decision to do Fuji this year?
Um, I think it was probably after it was so the racing season in Hong Kong basically runs from October to about April. because from about April to October, the weather is just not suitable for long distance trail running. It's too hot, it's too humid, it's just unsafe. So as I was towards the end of the summer, when it was clear that I wasn't going to run the 100-mile race in September, I was putting together my schedule of races for the upcoming Hong Kong racing season. And that was when I really started to think about Fuji again, and it was like, do I try this again? Do I want to go back? And I think at the end of the day, the answer was yes, because when you've never DNF'd before, and you DNF, it's a really dissatisfying feeling. Especially because especially for 100-mile race, because a 100-mile race requires a decent amount of preparation.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're gonna go, if you're gonna run a 25K, for example, it's not ideal to just roll out of bed without any training and run a 25K, but it's not something that requires a tremendous amount of work to work up to. Whereas a 100-mile definitely does. And so to DNF after all that was just like, this is so unsatisfying. So that was pretty much when I decided, I think, that I was going to go back.
Okay, so the decision is made, and we took a look at your race calendar. How did the build-up look for the 100 miles this year?
So, I mean, in terms of the race calendar, I built it this year. I built it in a way that, I don't know, it just makes sense to me. I started with a fast 25, an easy fast 25, done in 2 hours. Fantastic, great. Home in time for lunch with the kids, kind of a thing. And then went for a 50, and that 50 was a good result. And then from there, I did back-to-back hundreds, about 4 or 5 weeks apart. Each one of which was an okay result. I think I've sworn off midnight races, midnight starts. I mean, midnight starts, I find maybe it's just not my thing.
It's not for you.
Yeah. But I say that, but so then after the back-to-back hundreds, I did a multi-stage race where the first day started at midnight, and that definitely cemented in my mind that midnight start races were not for me. But that was a good experience because it was 50 miles on the first day and 50 kilometers on the second day, for whatever that is, a total of 80 something miles. And the second day was hard. And it had a lot of elevation.
For people who are watching, that's the Nine Dragons Ultra in Hong Kong, and I think the 50K has like 3,000 meters of climb or something, doesn't it?
Yeah, the 50K, I think it's a total of about 52K actually, and I think it's over 3,000 meters of climbing.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty chunky race. And the first day is no picnic either. I mean, it's probably 53 miles on the first day. And even on the first day, you're probably doing 4,000 meters of climbing on the first day. So it's a chunky race. But the second day was just about finishing for me and understanding what it feels like to be that deep into a race. Given, sure, I got to go home the night before and get a little sleep and have something to eat. But just to understand what that feels like, you're 75 miles into this race and you still have, another 8 miles to go, kind of a thing. Mentally, that was very useful build up for the 100-mile race at Fuji, which was a solid 9 weeks after that. So there was time for a recovery, maybe even 10 weeks. So there's time for a recovery and then a proper build towards Fuji.
And even during this time, we were still managing some niggling issues with your hamstring, weren't we? It's not like during this whole time we never did a regular training plan. There was no real high intensity work.
That's right. We were not when I did the first 25 at the beginning of the season, someone asked me, well, what's your confidence interval for this? And I was like, I don't know, 80, 85%. Like it still wasn't great. And even the first 100K that I did, it still wasn't great during this season. It was probably finally when I got to the second 100K where it started to, although maybe even during Nine Dragons, there was a few minors. So yeah, so still wasn't great. This is what happens when you're almost 50.
I know the feeling, Dave. I know the feeling. But we did manage good volume in that time, and for the 100 miles, that's the most important.
Yeah, I mean, we basically scrapped most of the intensity and just focused on just volume, excuse me, straight volume, and yeah, that seemed to work. I guess we put a little intensity in at the end, but
yeah, we had some kind of threshold-based efforts and things, but we didn't have any of the real quality, like higher intensity hill work that we would normally have, which isn't necessarily you don't need it for 100 miles, but it does make you feel good.
Yeah, no, for sure. In fact, I was just out with a friend a few weeks ago who's training for the spine race, and we were talking. He's probably a little bit stronger than me on the road, and I think maybe I'm a little bit stronger than him on the trail. And we were just talking about trail, and I said to him, excuse me, I said to him, if you want to run fast on the trail, you should try running fast on the trail. And the point being that it can't, if you want to run fast, it can't all be just zone 2 work, right?
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
you need those days where you put a little intensity in, so you feel that pace, you get used to that pace, and honestly, I think where you get used to making those quick decisions about where are my feet going.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
You need to make that second nature. Okay, so we've had a reasonable build-up. We've had good volume. We haven't had your regular blocks of intensity. When you get to Fuji this time, how are you actually feeling about the race?
I was feeling great. I learned some things from last year, which is last year I got to the race area. So for people, Fuji is very close to Tokyo. It's less than 2 hours by car, train, or bus, and there's plenty of trains and buses that go to Fuji from Tokyo because it's a major tourist attraction. So the closest gateway town is there. And so last year I actually got in to the gateway town the day of the race. And there was a lot of things that went wrong the night before and the day that I got there. So I was kind of stressed out. And then, I don't know, my lunch didn't sit great. There's just lots of things that were not great. So this year I just decided I get there the night before. No stress. Don't have to worry about anything. And can just go down, get my packet, get all my gear ready, and just kind of be in a nice, calm place. So I was feeling good about the training, no injuries. Everything was going solid. I was feeling good about just the day of the race, the venue itself. Just like everything was just kind of lining up. So
You had your
yeah,
Garmin charger with you this time because the previous year,
yes.
the previous year you didn't have your charger for your watch.
Yeah, well, or the charger that I had suddenly crapped out. But yeah, that was part of the stress.
Okay, so race day comes, and it's a midnight start, isn't it? It's a late, an evening start.
It's an evening start. Last year it was a midnight start. So I guess that makes 3 total midnight starts that I've ever done. This year they moved it to 5 p.m. I don't know what the reasoning was behind the change, but I much preferred it. So you're
Yeah.
actually starting, you're not reasonably sleepy already when you're starting. You're still starting in the daylight, which I always find nice. I mean, yeah, it got dark within 90 minutes or, 2 hours of the start, but you have that first bit of time to just kind of settle in.
Okay.
And the first section of the race is actually not a difficult section either. So you can really just kind of settle into your groove, settle into your thing, and then sort of go from there. And yeah, it's amazing what proper preparation will do.
For your confidence, and it just makes you much more
for your
relaxed.
confidence. Yes.
And
So
how was the weather conditions this year? Because Fuji can be, some years it can be particularly bad.
yeah, so both last year and this year, the weather conditions were quite good, I would say. This year, I think it got up to about 16 or 17 during the day, and it was the first night. I don't think it got much below 7 or 8. The second night, it did get cold. It was probably down to about 3 at the bottom of the hills, maybe 4 at the bottom of the hills, so a couple of degrees cooler at the top of some of the hills.
And
That was
it's difficult when you're already fatigued.
yeah. By the end of the race, I didn't have much left. Heart rate super low, and I was very glad for the mandatory gear at that point.
Yeah.
Because I put most of my mandatory gear on so that I wouldn't be too cold as I was zombie shuffling my way to the finish.
And with the mandatory gear, is there anything in there that's particular to Mount Fuji, or it's just your typical ultra mandatory kit list?
I mean, in Japan, I would say culturally, they're very strong on safety.
Okay.
So there might be a few more things in there than you would normally expect to find for a race that's going on essentially in spring weather. But I don't think there's anything in there that's particularly unusual. I know that some of the Japanese mountain races will require like crampons for potential snow conditions, but Fuji doesn't require.
Okay, good. No crampons required.
Yeah.
Is always
No,
a focus.
it's basically just, excuse me, it's basically just long sleeve, long pants, hat, gloves, kind of a thing. Rain gear, obviously.
Okay.
That kind
So
of thing.
the first night, how did that go?
First night was great.
And
I mean, if for some people, 8 might be cold. For me, it's as a former road runner from New York City, it's fantastic.
yeah, good conditions.
Yeah, no issues at all.
And what kind of distance did you cover in that first night?
So in the first night, I probably covered. I made it. So let's see. It's from somewhere between the start and the first checkpoints. Let's say from about 15K is when probably turned the lamp on. I made it to 70K.
Okay.
And then
And
at the
that's an important
70K aid
landmark for you.
station. Yeah, 70K is where I dropped the previous year. And at 70K, as I'm standing there and the sun's starting to come up, excuse me, a little bit of a post-nasal drip. As the sun's starting to come up, I was like, wow, I made it here an hour and a half earlier than I did last year, and I'm feeling good. And let's go.
A nice feeling compared to the last time.
Yeah, especially with the sun coming up, because you do get if there's anybody watching who's never done an overnight race before, you really do get a lift when the sun comes up.
Yeah, makes a huge difference.
It does. It's really surprising almost, but you can be feeling just absolutely the lowest of lows. And as soon as you start to see that blush in the sky, and suddenly the birds all start chirping out of nowhere, like together. And it's just sort of like gives you this huge lift.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. That's it's very common. It's something that everyone experiences. Okay, so we've done the first night. We're into day two. How did that go?
day two started fine. So one thing I should mention about Fuji, in addition to being very close to Tokyo, which makes it a very good destination race, I think. For Hong Kongers, it's easy because we're so close. But it's a kind of thing where if you've ever wanted to go to Tokyo or to Japan, you can do a holiday in Japan and tack Fuji on to the end of it. April's a great time to be in Japan. If you like skiing, you can go to the mountains. There's still some snow. If you don't like skiing, you stay in the south of the country. And weather's quite pleasant. But so yeah. Anyway, so Fuji itself, it's got kind of varied terrain. Some of it is Forest Service Road. Some of it is really technical stuff. Some of it is super steep ups and downs. Some of it is running through villages and towns. All different kinds of surfaces that you're running on. So it's a really interesting race in that way. And you don't actually run on Fuji itself. I should make this clear because you would think Mount Fuji 100, obviously you're running on Mount Fuji. No, you're actually running kind of in a giant circle around.
Oh, very nice.
Those things where I liken it to the Grand Canyon in the United States. It's one of those things that pictures don't do any justice to.
It's
You
much
cannot
better in the flesh.
appreciate the awe that it inspires. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You can't appreciate that until you're actually there. But yeah, so it's got all these kind of varied terrain. So second day starts out with a bit of road and then running through a bit of forest, and then there's a nice hill, but nothing terrible. Get into 97K aid station, which is where the drop bag is. Um, and then it's like that's also the finish point. So it's like, am I really gonna leave? It's like it's 70K to come back here. Am I really gonna leave? But yeah. So and everything is going great because now the sun's up and you're getting it's a slightly easier section of the race. You got through a couple of really difficult sections. Now you're getting slightly easier section. And then after about 75K, it starts to get super hard again. And that's about where the wheels started to come off. And that's where I had to start digging a little deeper, refocusing a little bit, thinking about why I was doing this.
And when you say the wheels were coming off, what was happening there? Your energy was gone, muscle fatigue, nutrition bad?
Yeah. It started for me. It started as muscle fatigue. I was losing the downs.
Okay.
In Hong Kong, we have a lot of stairs. We don't have a lot of steep downs. It's just kind of a quirk of trail running here. So I think I just wasn't as used to doing those steep downs, and I just started to lose them. I was just not able to kind of run them as much anymore. And yeah, I mean, energy levels weren't great. Food was a bit of an issue. But and then a little bit of GI issues that I had to deal with. Okay. I mean, these are all kind of standard things, but when you've never done 100 before and you're at mile 80 something and you're like, I still have more than 20 miles to go. It can be a little daunting, especially because I knew what was coming. Even though I hadn't been on this part of the course, I knew what was coming. And there were some really tough climbs coming. But for me, what was important was focusing on why. And why wasn't just, well, I've tried this 3 times already and damn it, I'm going to do this. But why was, promised my kids I was going to finish this.
That's a powerful why.
Yeah. They had been with me last year when I didn't finish. And they said, you know, it's okay, Daddy, you tried your best. Um, you know, so this year, before they weren't with me at the race, but before I left for the race, I promised them that I was going to finish this year. So, yeah, so I was thinking about that in mile 80 something when everything was kind of just going sideways, and then kind of just use that to just keep putting one foot in front of the other.
And for people watching who've never done 100 miles, they may be thinking, you've already done 80. What's another 20? But that other 20 is it's not just another 20.
I mean the thing is, when I got to what I think was the 84-mile aid station. So there's 20 miles to go at that point. And I was looking at the clock, and at the clock I was 24 hours in. So that's the first thing. You're 24 hours in, right? I mean, you've been up for more than 24 hours because you were up from the morning when the race started. So you've been up for whatever it is, probably 35 hours or so, something like that. And you're like, it might take me another 7 or 8 hours from here to do 20 miles. And as I said, I knew what was coming because I looked at the course profile, and I knew that there was, in fact, coming soon was a scrambling section. Like a legit, you need to use your hands and ropes and chains, a legit scrambling section. Yeah. Right, just what you need that deep into a race. And it's just sort of like, wow, this is going to be rough, but you know, let's just get to it then. You know, load up on food and let's get to it. It's not going to get done by staying here at the aid station. So.
Exactly. And how did they go with those last stages?
So the last 2 sections, yeah, the first of the 2 was okay. An interesting thing about Fuji is that they also have a 70K race, and there's even this year they added a 40K. The 70K race shares the same course as the miler from the miler drop bag. So basically the 70K starts and ends where the miler drop bag is and ends at the same place. So I got through that drop bag section about 4 hours before the 70K started. So by the time I got to this section where the scrambling was, the leaders for the 70K were coming through, and watching them go up this section like goats was just, I mean, it was just like
with their fresh legs.
Hey, yeah, with their fresh legs, but it just kind of blows your mind to watch these people go through there. Inspiring in some ways, a little deflating in other ways.
Soul destroyed.
Yeah. But so the first of the 2 sections was not great, but okay. You get into the last aid station where they have yakisoba. So each of the aid stations had like local specialties that were provided by whatever village or town you were running through in that section of the race. And the last aid section, their local specialty is yakisoba. So you're basically sitting there with this steaming hot bowl of noodles. And it's just exactly what you want. Because it's nighttime now and it's cold and it's just like perfect. But then you still have to go through the last section. The last section's 18K, and I just didn't have a lot. I didn't have anything at that point. And I got to a point where it's like, okay, here we have to turn for the last hill, and it's like, really? Do we have to? And then the last hill just switchbacks forever. And it's nighttime, so you can't see where the top is. All you can do is look up and see, oh, no, there's still lights switchbacking ahead of me. Okay, we're still switchbacking, we're still going, we're still going. And you just have to trust that at some point you're going to get up there, and then that's going to be, that's not the end, but it's a lot easier from there.
You still need to come back down with your trashed quads.
Yeah, you still need to come back down with your trash cars, and now everybody in the 70K is passing you. But right near the top, just a few minutes below the top, I had a friend from Hong Kong who was in the 70K who caught me. And he had done the 70K last year, and he's like, we're close. And then it's just a couple of bumps on the way down. He's like, it's not a straight down, but but it's just a few small bumps. So he's like, just kind of keep going. And it was really good timing, honestly. I mean, I've often told people that little interactions like that are what make these events for me. In my case, I speak some Japanese, so I was able to speak with some of the other runners along the way. I mean, not to say that everybody there is Japanese. This is a very international race. Lots of different people there. But it is Japan's oldest and biggest 100-mile race. So there are a lot of Japanese there. But just being able to have those little interactions along the way, I always find those to be real pick-me-ups.
Yeah, and especially at such a late stage into the race.
Yeah, exactly. I honestly try to talk to anybody I can during these kinds of races, just for that reason. I mean, I started this race, I bumped into somebody else from Hong Kong that I know, and we spent the first, 45 minutes of the race just chatting, and it just kind of makes it fly by.
Yeah.
So
you get to the last section. What kind of time is it, Dave, when you're coming into the finish?
Well, let's see. I finished just after midnight, so that last section, which took me 3.5 hours, so let's say 9 to 12, basically. So my finishing time was 31 hours. So it's about 9 to 12 at night on the second night, and it's been dark since about 6:30 or 7. So you're deep into the night now, and
the second night.
Just
that's difficult.
The second night. And you don't know the course. So you're just trusting that we're just going to keep putting one foot in front of the other. Just keep going. Just keep going. Don't stop. Just keep going. And you'll get there.
And eventually.
So yeah.
You did.
And eventually I got there. And it was but because it was midnight, I mean, obviously there were some volunteers at the finish, but there was basically nobody else at the finish. So it was a very subdued finish for me. I mean, for people who are finishing either earlier that night or the next morning, I think that it really is a very festive atmosphere at the finish. But when you're finishing in the dead of night, it's just the luck of the draw, I guess, as it goes for that. So very subdued. Not to say, again, super well organized, super well volunteered, like no qualms with any of that. Just, I myself was low energy by that point, right? So, I just wanted to go be warm. So.
I think you'd earned the right to be warm.
Yeah.
So just a little bit underwhelming at the finish line.
Well, it's not. I mean, I wouldn't say underwhelming, because I think that does a disservice to Fuji, because the race director was there and he was shaking hands with everybody and congratulating everybody. I mean, and I have to imagine that he was there all night. I mean, there's no reason for me to suspect that he wasn't. I mean, so I don't want to do the race a disservice. I mean, underwhelming, part of that was just like me being like absolutely shattered, and it being the dead of the night on the second night, and not having had any sleep for a day and a half. Yeah, that's just me. That's not them. So
Yeah, I think at that stage also, when you're sleep deprived, you're physically exhausted, your emotions are just short also. Like, it's difficult to
yeah,
describe to someone.
yeah. I mean, I bet the best way I can describe it is you feel super leveled out at that point. You're glad it's done, but you don't have any real highs about it, nor do you have any real lows at that point. You're just sort of leveled out, and you're just like, oh, we're done. Great, great,
Yeah.
great.
It's in the coming days that it begins to sink in what you've achieved.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, I mean, maybe other people are different. Maybe other people have, super high highs from finishing a race of that magnitude. But for me, at that moment, especially because it was so deep into the night, I needed a little more time, basically.
To process it. It was
Yeah.
very nice to see the tracker that you had finished, Dave, after what happened the previous year. It was I had fingers, toes, and everything crossed for you this time around.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was uh it was when I got to the 70K, I think, that I really knew it was gonna happen. I mean, you never know. In a 100-mile race, anything and everything can and will go wrong. And like I said, I was feeling pretty solid until the 80s, and then after that. Um, but uh, but yeah, I when I got to 70K and I was feeling so solid, having had the reference point of the previous year, that's when I felt really confident it was going to happen. But I mean, it's a great race. It is a great race. I mean, even put aside the fact that it's part of this World Trail Majors or whatever it is now. I mean, it is a race. Japan as a country is great at logistics. These races are as much about the logistics of putting on an event of this magnitude as they are anything. Anybody can lay out a plot that's 100 miles long, but having all the volunteers where they need to be, when they need to be, having all the food, all the water, all the whatever, doing the race packet pickups, having the buses, we had to take, where you start from, you basically have to take a bus to. It's not really convenient to anything. They have that all figured out to a T. They've been doing it down there for whatever it is now, 12 or 13 years. And the thing is, Japan culturally is a culture that thrives on people coming together to get things done. They are a collective culture. So something like this is just like right in the Japanese cultural wheelhouse. And they really do a great job of it. I mean, I told the first guy that I ran into along the way, the first friend, I was like, you're going to see more volunteers out here on the course than you've ever seen in your life. At the tops of the hills, they had people ringing bells so that you would know you were finally getting to the top. like that kind of thing. They had medical tents in places that, I mean, I just nowhere near any aid stations. I mean, but just random medical tents in case, people were having a hard time of it, needed. I mean, just really great on all those little things. And then, the aid stations are well stocked and all the rest of that. I mean, no issues there. But just all the little things and everybody so friendly and just wanting to be helpful. And yeah, it really just makes for a great experience.
On that note, Dave, thanks a million. Thank you for watching, guys. Please like and subscribe. Apologies for the abrupt end to the interview. Unfortunately, the software deleted the last 5 minutes of Dave's audio, but you got the major part of the story. I'll be back later this week with part 3 in the Back to Zero series, so I shall see you then. Thanks for watching.